Hi, welcome to Geeked Up. This is Luke,
And this is Max.
and today we're going to talk about Arkham Origins.
That one Arkham game.
Yep,
That's Christmas themed.
yep.
Yep.
The one that's not part of the Arkham trilogy.
No, it's not.
Uh,
For worst reason, I would say, because I think I haven't played Origins in a hot minute.
mhm.
To be honest, we used to say that we should have played every Christmas,
Yeah.
just because it is Christmas themed, and I think there's something really nice about a Batman during Christmas.
Yeah,
I think there's something that's really unique about that, and it's such a good vibe, I feel. But I played the Arkham games every year, apart from Origins.
yeah,
I played the trilogy: Asylum, City, and Night.
yeah.
Just there's something about Origins that is, well, there's many reasons why it's not a part of the trilogy. It's not made by Rocksteady, who are the developers.
Yeah.
It is a Christmas game, so people might want to save that for Christmas.
True.
Like, you're planning to play it this Christmas. I
Yes,
understand.
I will be playing it next week.
Yeah. But I think for me, as a Christmas game, there's kind of been games that have come out which have kind of taken over that sort of place in terms of what I play at Christmas time. That would usually be something like God of War Ragnarok,
Mhm.
which is what I'm playing at the moment. I'm replaying that just because it's not a Christmas game,
Yeah,
but it's got this winter aesthetic to it,
true.
and I think it's really nice. But yeah, it is this sort of black sheep.
I agree.
Ooh, is it the black sheep of the franchise?
I wouldn't say it is anymore. I mean, I don't count the one that we're about to talk about as part of the franchise anyways.
No, I don't.
But if we're
I don't.
talking about realistically, yes, I wouldn't say it's the black sheep anymore.
That honor goes to Suicide Squad Kill.
But if
the
we're
Justice League.
true. But if we're talking about the the Arkham games themselves, then yeah, it is because of the reasons that you mentioned.
Yes.
But yeah, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League kind of revived this game a bit in my opinion. The fact that it wasn't the worst game in the franchise anymore.
Yes.
I mean, it can be debated. Like, a lot of people think that Arkham City's very overrated. I understand that it's your favorite now.
Oh, it's so hard to say. I mean, this should just be a podcast about the entire series, to be honest.
True.
But I think would be here forever. I'm just gonna say that upon recent playthrough this year, back in September and October, City ended up being the one I enjoyed most.
Okay.
But ever since I played Night, back in, I want to say 2019 was the first time I played that game.
Yeah.
That had been my favorite, and every time I played the trilogy, that was always my favorite
Yeah.
for the past, what is it, 5 years
Mhm.
since. But this time, for the first time since Night, City has been the one I enjoyed most. But I think because of Night, and definitely because of Suicide Squad, I feel like in more recent years, Origins has been more beloved.
That's what
by
I'm
people.
saying. Yeah. I think it's sort of been revived a little bit.
Yeah, it's got this underrated element to it.
Definitely.
And I do agree with that. I think it's still my least favorite. I'm not counting Suicide Squad.
Least favorite Arkham game.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're gonna pretend Suicide Squad doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think for the
And
rest
we
of
also haven't played Arkham Shadows, so we can't really comment
good
on
point.
that.
Good point.
We can't really comment on that.
No.
But in terms of the Arkham games that aren't VR,
Yeah.
and aren't Suicide Squad, because that's not part of the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely the one with the most flaws, which is interesting because it's not the oldest. It's
not.
actually the second newest in the
Yeah.
franchise. But in my opinion, and in your opinion as well, from what I understand, it's the one that needs a remaster or remake the most.
Yeah. Definitely. It's. I think it for the time it came out, which was over 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
It was 2013 when it was released. And it was made by a different studio who didn't make the original games.
Warner Brothers Montreal.
Yeah, it was made by them, who have made games since. Well, they made Arkham Shadow.
Yeah.
As well.
They also made Gotham Knights.
They did also make Gotham
So-
Knights, and we don't really want to talk about that because
Yeah.
that game was terrible for the few hours that
True.
we played of that.
Yep.
I forget what my point was, but I think we were talking about how it needed a remake.
Yes.
For the time it was released in 2013, it felt it didn't feel up to snuff with the games that were releasing at the time.
I agree.
It's I still go back and I play City, and I feel like City is a lot more cohesive. Even Asylum.
I feel the city's
still makes
ahead of its
sense.
time.
Yeah.
Really. Asylum definitely shows its age, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
I agree also.
In the sense that, like, this is their first game, so it's very much its fundamentals.
Yes.
And I don't think you'd feel it as much if it was your first Arkham game.
Yeah.
But if you play City or Origins or Night, and then you go to Asylum, you notice it's just not as fluid. The combat's not as advanced, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does show its age in that sense because they're sort of like starting to level out the playing field to see what they can do, setting the stage almost.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely got the least replayability because it is so limited. It's the bare bones of the franchise.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love Asylum. I've got even a little bit of nostalgia. I played it when I was a kid, maybe shouldn't have, but I do have that element of nostalgia every time I play it.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I keep going back to it every year. But out of the trilogy that I do play every year, it's the one I least enjoy, which is a shame. But I think it is because it has aged. It's still a great game.
Yep.
But Origins is different in terms of it shouldn't feel the way it feels.
Yes.
It feels like it's got a lot more flaws.
Yeah.
To it. So do you have specifics that you want to talk about?
Well, the question is remaster or remake, because it needs one of them.
Okay.
It needs one of them, right? And I think we should be specific on which one it needs.
Okay, well, maybe let's explain what each other's perception of a remaster or remake is.
So a remaster is literally just a updated version of the graphics. The game is not overhauled.
Right.
There's literally no difference in terms of voice recordings, gameplay, fundamentals, all of that stays the exact same. The only thing that's changed is a graphical boost.
Yes.
So that it's in more line with the times.
Okay.
A remake is where the game is made again from the ground up.
Okay.
Not The Last of Us Part 1.
Okay, right.
Okay? Something that takes the game that we once had and makes it up to scratch in every element.
Right.
Not just the graphics.
Okay.
Right? In that sense, I think it needs a remake, not a remaster. But I would be not just as happy, but I would be content with a remaster because boy are its graphics just awful.
Yeah.
It is definitely a sluggish part of the game having to experience it in such low quality,
Yes.
which sucks.
Definitely. It's a shame, really, because you get things like the cutscenes, and I think the cutscenes look really good.
Yes. But they also show their age.
They do.
Because they're capped at 30 frames.
Yeah. I think there's a clear difference in how the cutscenes look and how the gameplay looks.
Agreed.
And it is really striking, and I think that really adds to this lack of cohesiveness with it. The cutscenes feel really poppy, and the gameplay feels so, I don't even know how to describe it, I guess a bit more grungy.
Yeah.
And just less stylized in a lot of ways.
You feel like you're being taken out of the experience once the cutscene's ended.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something you don't get with the other three games because the cutscenes aren't. I forget the word. Pre-rendered. The cutscenes aren't pre-rendered.
Yeah.
They're rendered in the same graphical engine.
Yes.
As the video game, the gameplay.
Yes.
Which means all of the game when it comes to a remaster can be updated,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
When it comes to the other three games.
Yes.
When it comes to Origins, it's not the same because it's a different type of, I don't know, animation. It's pre-rendered. It's not the same gameplay. So you've got to think about it in a different way. But I don't think the graphics are its only issue. I think there are things, if they were to remaster or remake it, it has to be a remake because there's different things that they need to tackle to make it a better experience.
A remaster would not make it a perfect game.
I don't
It would
think
improve the experience. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, a remake would really be beneficial to it.
Yeah.
Like, it could be the best Arkham game if it got a remake. It could be.
I agree because I really like the story. There's something about that story that is so traditional, right? It just feels like classic Batman and Joker type of rivalry.
Yeah.
And it's nice because, yes, the Arkham games kind of have that, but they sort of fit into their own style.
Yeah.
Whereas it actually does feel like an origin of Batman when you're playing Arkham Origins.
Yeah.
And yes, while some things don't canonically make sense, like why is he wearing such high-tech ballistic armor?
Yeah.
And then 10 years later he's back wearing latex.
Yeah.
Doesn't make that much sense.
Not really.
And all of his gadgets disappear.
Yeah, that's true.
But in terms of like gameplay, that only elevates Arkham Origins compared to Asylum. So you can't really argue against that for Origins' sake because the gameplay is more fun, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I mean, it tries new things out that we didn't see beforehand in the other Arkham games.
Yeah.
You have the electrocutioner's gloves.
Yes.
You know, those are a big gameplay.
It's like Rage Mode.
Fundamental, yeah,
Pretty much.
basically, from God of War.
Yes.
Yeah, it adds a different element that you don't see in the other ones, which is fun. I like that they were experimenting because they probably weren't going to get another chance at this.
Yeah.
Which was cool to see them. So there isn't, not everything's bad with this game. There is definitely some really good moments in Arkham Origins. But there are flaws. And I think the biggest one for me is...
Are we talking other than graphics?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Is traversal.
Ooh, okay. Well, I think we can link it to... Traversal is like one part of, I think, multiple things.
Okay.
Which, I guess one of them, those multiple things, would be the open world. And
That's but I'm saying that like that whole part.
Yeah, that whole part of the game is very flat, very boring.
Agreed.
Really, I'd say confusing.
Yes.
I think it's so. Again, links in with the graphics. I just don't think that Gotham looks appealing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any recognizable locations, and half of the map is the map from Arkham City.
Yes.
And then they added this new island to create a bigger Gotham.
But it doesn't feel unique in any way.
It doesn't. It doesn't feel iconic.
Yeah.
Like I feel like City. If you put me up to it, I could kind of say where everything is.
Yeah.
In City, I couldn't begin to tell you what's in Origins map. I really couldn't.
And that's the cool thing about Night. A couple of years later, 3 islands. But these islands have such a different style to each other that they all pop out.
Yep.
They all feel different.
Yep.
And I really like that they also unlock as you go on.
Yes.
Like you don't go to all 3 instantly.
You don't.
So you notice the difference once you're on another island.
Yes.
You start on Miyagani, don't you?
Bleak Island.
Bleak, and then Miyagani, and then Founders.
Founders, yes.
Yes, okay.
That's it. And yeah, I agree. Each of those 3 islands they feel like they're in the same city, obviously, but they all have different qualities to them. You could put me on one of them. Like if you just show me an image, I could tell you what island it was on, and I think that is really unique. But with Origins, I could be anywhere,
Agreed.
and I would have no idea where it was. So I think that is a massive issue.
Yes.
To it. So yeah, it's a shame. And there's supposedly rumors of a remake. Is that right?
I did hear something, but it wasn't. I don't think it was Origins. It was Asylum.
It was Asylum getting a remake.
Asylum's apparently getting a remake, and there was also rumors at the same time of Roger Craig Smith being in the recording room again.
Right. So Roger Craig Smith is Batman. He plays Batman in Origins
and Arkham Shadow.
but originally it was Kevin Conroy, rest his soul.
Yeah,
The
the late Kevin Conroy used to play in Asylum. So obviously he's passed, and if they're going to go about a remake, I suppose the best person for the job would be Roger Craig Smith.
Yes.
But it also feels like we're leaving behind a very key part of the Arkham franchise if we're going about that. Because if that means if they're remastering Asylum, then we have City and Knight who have a completely different voice actor, and it doesn't make sense, right? If they remaster all of them, there's no Kevin Conroy anymore. And I think he has one of the best performances ever in video game history when it comes to being Batman.
Well, yeah.
He is Batman.
He is.
He is. I don't think there's a debate about that between us. We both know that he's Batman for us.
Yes. Yeah, I especially agree. His performance in Arkham Knight is something to behold. Like the last mission of that game alone with his voice and that character is just fantastic.
Agreed.
But I do really like Roger Craig Smith.
I do.
As Batman. I think he's really a good successor.
But should he be a contender? No, not in my opinion.
Not to take over.
That's what I'm saying.
Not to take over.
I don't think he should. I don't think there should be an argument for him taking Kevin Conroy's place.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be a place to take.
Agreed.
The Arkham trilogy should stay the way that it is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Knight doesn't even need a remaster.
It does.
In my opinion.
No.
That game, it's incredible how that game looks.
It is.
10 years, well, nearly 10 years later. You know what I mean? And you see games like now, like Suicide Squad didn't look that bad. But Gotham Knights, come on.
Yeah.
If you compare Knight to the Gotham Knights, it's like night and day.
Pretty much.
And one of them is nearly 10 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were feeding Rocksteady at that time, but they were on something different.
They were ahead of the game.
And yeah, it just I really don't understand why there is a space to debate whether Kevin Conroy should still be. But I mean, again, these are rumors. We don't know. There's no definitive. Oh yes, there is an Arkham Asylum remake happening. We don't know that for certain. It's basically just rumors that Roger Craig Smith's in the studio, and then there's rumors of Arkham Asylum getting a remake. So we're just pointing fingers and we're assuming here.
Yeah.
But if it were to happen, I'd be against it, really.
I mean, the idea of any of the Arkham games getting a remake, even though I agree, or I disagree with them doing that. I don't think that they need a remake or remaster, really, because I think they hold up today incredibly.
Agreed.
But it would be really fun to see a more modern day Arkham Asylum.
Yes.
But I think it doesn't need it, and the game that does is Arkham Origins.
Yes. And that is the one that should be prioritized.
It should,
in my opinion.
But for some reason, they do not want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's because there is a stigma about the game that when it first came out,
most likely,
it just wasn't successful. I mean, when was it? There was, there were so many rumors before Night about what the final game would be, because we had Batman Arkham World, which I think was teased at the Game Awards. I can't remember, but there was a tease for a game called Batman Arkham World.
Oh, really? I didn't.
Yeah, there was an actual
never
teaser
heard
about
of
it.
that.
I'll have to show you after the podcast.
Okay.
But and then, what was the other one? There was a one where it's supposed to be. It was just like set in the future, after Arkham Knight, and there would be an old Bruce Wayne, and there would be a what's his name?
Terry McGinnis.
Yes.
Is Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond. There you go.
And
I think it was Batman Arkham Beyond. That might have been the name of the game.
It probably was, and I think that's a great title. Again, it would have been awesome to see Kevin Conroy take on that kind of older Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And kind of breed this next generation. I think it would feel a lot more genuine if we had that.
Yeah.
Rather than going back and remaking games with different actors.
Or Suicide Squad.
Yeah, that's even worse.
They actually had the opportunity to make Arkham Beyond, and they shut that down, and they went with the Suicide Squad direction.
Yes.
And while you can tell that there was some passion in Suicide Squad, it falls under the live service category. And that was its biggest downfall. The fact that it relied on how many players were playing at a certain amount of time for it to be successful.
Yeah.
Therefore, it locked certain things from playability until they were for certain that they could release them to the public, kind of thing.
Yes.
And what's so sad about that is we played Suicide Squad when it first came out, and Batman had so many lines, and I was so surprised that they got so many voice lines out of Kevin Conroy before he passed.
Yes.
And I was really happy to hear his voice again.
Yeah, me too.
I wish it was in a different way, now that I look back on it.
I agree.
And
it was cool for the moment, but I think once that
nostalgia wore off.
that initial excitement and nostalgia wears off, it becomes really distasteful.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Kevin was great in that game for what he was doing, but I just don't think the writing and the direction was good enough for what he was bringing to the table. And he brought his all. He was trying his best. You can tell. I
completely agree.
I mean, the final season is out now. Season 4, before they cancel it, that is out now.
Yeah. And it's being cancelled next month.
It is. It is being. And
but
then there will be no more feature of that game.
And that's kind of what I wanted to get into. That's what I'm saying. I kind of wish that it never really happened, because it was such a big thing on release, and now we might never really have gotten to see what was supposed to happen, what Kevin Conroy was supposed to do for that story.
Yes.
Because it's getting cancelled.
Yes.
So we don't know if there's something that they were going to show us of Kevin, and now they're dumping it because the thing wasn't successful.
Yeah.
Whereas if they went with a single player game, they wouldn't have fussed about with the content, and they would have released it to us the way that it should have been released, just all at once, so people can enjoy it. And I think it's bad when I look back on a game like that, and my favorite moment was it was near the start, when it was looking back on the other Arkham games through a little fun house thing. My favorite part of that game was looking back on the other games. You know what I mean? Nothing about that game with its own uniqueness actually made me like it.
Yeah.
It was reminiscing
about the other ones.
On how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Batman himself is really cool in the game.
Yeah.
Until you get to his boss fight, and it's so underwhelming.
It is.
It's unbelievably
I think every
underwhelming.
boss fight in that game was underwhelming.
Yes.
I mean, this was supposed to be an episode on Arkham Origins, but I feel like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has sort of taken Origins' place.
Yep. I mean,
bad things to talk
about. We've talked about every Batman game so far.
Yeah, it might as well just be an Arkham series episode at this point.
Yeah.
But those boss fights were awful, and I guess I should support this argument just by saying that Kevin Conroy has meant the world to me and you.
Yes.
Growing up.
Agreed.
He has been there. When I think of Batman, I think of Kevin Conroy. And he is such a wholesome human being that when he was sort of discarded by this Suicide Squad, and I guess him being replaced, it's kind of just, it feels very distasteful and kind of a little bit disrespectful.
I know.
Just because I feel like I would have loved to have seen him give this final big performance in something that we loved.
Yeah.
Especially because he was coming back. If his final performance was in Night and that was his goodbye,
that would have been the perfect goodbye.
It would have been the perfect goodbye for Kevin. Yeah. And if it, he gives so much to the character, and I feel like he is so embedded in people's minds. When I read comic books of Batman,
you read it in his voice.
I hear his voice.
Yeah. And
it's so wholesome. I watched when he first passed, I watched a documentary about him. I mean, it was on YouTube. I don't know if you call those documentaries or not. But he had such an interesting life, and it was so nice to see more about him, and it just made his passing even more impactful.
Yeah.
So it's a shame to see that we're going a direction away from him.
Yeah.
Rather than, I guess, just leaving it be, you know. So.
And I mean, the only reason why we have Arkham Origins is because they wanted an Arkham game They wanted an Arkham game before Arkham Knight came out.
Yeah.
And they didn't have Kevin Conroy to perform it because he was busy doing Knight. So they call in Roger Craig Smith.
Yes.
And, you know, whilst people would have been like, oh, Kevin Conroy's the better Batman, it should have been him. Looking back on it now, it's like, that means we have more room to explore the Arkhamverse without needing Kevin Conroy, but not whilst also not treading on his spotlight.
Yes.
We have Kevin Conroy's trilogy,
Yes.
right? But that doesn't mean we can't explore Roger Craig Smith's universe.
Yes.
I mean, they both are in the same universe, but it is like sort of his story until it gets to Kevin Conroy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I mean, we've got 10 years to explore there, which
Yeah.
I feel like is what Arkham Shadow has
Shadows,
done.
yeah.
Again, we haven't played it, but from what I've seen, I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of interesting story stuff there to do with characters
Yeah.
that sort of come in later in the series, and
Mhm.
I think it's quite interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that's why, again, I don't think the Kevin Conroy stuff should be trampled on.
No.
I think that it's perfect the way it is, and we need to look at what needs improving, and that is Origins. And like you said, I think it is really good, but it can be near perfect if they just fix a couple of key things in that game.
yes,
I mean, I should have said it earlier. Again, you know when a game knows its faults when it introduces a fast travel mechanic. It knew how sluggish its gameplay
it did.
and its traversal was going to be because it added a fast travel.
Yes,
It knew how hard it was going to be to get across the map, so it was like, oh, we'll just teleport there instead.
yeah. We'll try and solve the issue through a boring way of solving it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense that Batman would use his Batwing to get across the city, but you know that it's to compensate for the bad traversal because you can feel how bad the traversal is.
yeah. It's really
If it was
boring.
added to Night, it wouldn't be that much of an issue
No,
because it's already fun to get across the city in
Yeah.
Night. And you would just be like, oh, well, it's cool that they've added it for me, but I'm just not going to use it because
Yeah.
it's fun to glide as Batman anyways.
Yeah.
In Origins, it almost becomes essential to get
Yeah,
around that city.
pretty much. And the annoying thing is that you have to unlock the fast travel
True.
through the Riddler
Yeah.
trophies and challenges and whatnot. So yeah, it there's a little bit of frustration there anyways for that. But yeah,
Agreed.
they definitely knew that they were wrong for what they did, and
Yeah.
I know there was limitations because of the production behind Night
Yeah.
and how that was supposed to be the new generation kind of
Definitely.
expand the Arkhamverse, but C didn't have that problem. Asylum didn't have that problem.
I know.
I don't know why Origins did.
But I think you're onto something there with the fact that it was probably to do with deadlines.
Yeah.
The fact that they probably couldn't have expanded on the traversal as much as they wanted to because Night was around the corner and they're supposed to release before Night.
Yes.
Whereas Asylum and City don't have that issue because they're not trying to come behind something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
hmm
So it's like,
Origins was definitely in the shadow
yeah,
of Night.
and I feel like that in that sense it was almost destined to be as worse as Night. In the sense that like maybe it was intentional as well. Like because what if Origins was better than Night, and then they released the final game in the franchise and it wasn't as good as the Origins.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe it was given to Warner Brothers Montreal instead of Rocksteady because they didn't want it to succeed as much as they wanted the final game of the franchise to succeed.
Sure.
You know, there's all these questions that you could ask, but I think there's something there. And I think it needs its chance to redeem itself because there's definitely more to explore around that time period, but Origins itself has potential and a remake would be incredible.
It would. Well, when you play it in the next 2 to 3 weeks, something like that,
Be a week.
you'll probably have newfound thoughts on it.
Yep.
They didn't before. You'll either realize it's even worse than you thought, or it's
Yeah.
better than you thought, and whatnot. So
But I don't think that core part of me will disappear in the sense that there could have been something more.
yeah, definitely.
Whether I think it's better or worse, my opinion will stay the same in that it was a black sheep, and it didn't have its time to thrive
Yes.
when it deserved it,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But I feel like we should leave it there.
Yes.
Because we've talked for quite some time now.
Half of it probably not about Origins.
Yeah,
but it's fine.
And we could talk so much more about this if we split it into each game.
Yes.
I feel like there's enough to talk about for each game for about an hour each.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 hours each. You know
Most
what
likely,
I mean?
yeah.
So I think we'll definitely pick up on this sometime in the future.
Yes, I agree.
But for now, we're going to leave it here. We hope you enjoyed listening.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you in the next one.